Hi, and welcome to another tutorial. This tutorial is going to try and cover off changing your shaders that are used on static meshes. The reason why you would do this, and it's always best to be as consistent as you can, I suppose, with the sides that are in Tribe's Vengeance, but there might be a static mesh that you import in via the prefabs that, if it was the right colour, would suit say the Blood Eagle or the Imperial side, looking at the Phoenix side here with a base that I've just created. And there is a way of changing the shaders and the textures that are incorporated into certain aspects or certain static meshes, and that's what hopefully I'll try and explain now. But just to show you an example, I've made a base here for Phoenix side, and trying to be consistent with the static meshes that Phoenix uses. I've put the hatch here, I've put the base plate on the entrance. I've tried to be a little bit funky with the size of the base. Looks like a great big beer keg. But basically I've tried to mimic the same sort of base on the Blood Eagle side. And to do that, I've obviously had to use the same entrances and whatnot to pull off, I suppose, the round opening that I want on both bases. So just to bear with me, I'll show you what I've done with the BE base. Going across the map, and as you can see there, I've done some changes to the textures to basically keep the consistent colour of Blood Eagle, but in turn I've used the static meshes from Phoenix. So that's what I'll show you in this tutorial, so hopefully it won't take too long. So going back over to the Phoenix base, once again this tutorial is complemented by another tutorial that Valediction has done, which is once again available on my site. I'll also cover this off in a bit more detail myself in another tutorial, but he's done one in regards to shaders, and it explains in more detail, which I'm not going to explain in this tutorial. I simply just want to show you how you can mix things up and change the shaders around on static meshes to try and help you marry up a design that you want that may use a mesh or a static mesh from another side. But kick it in the guts and we'll start. What I'm going to do here is show you how to change the hatch, for example, to Blood Eagle colours. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this, and as you probably already know, to import a static mesh, you go up to the little teapot up the top there, choose static mesh, go into your open package folder. Before I do that, just as a little helping hand, whenever you open up the map for the first time, whatever static meshes you have used in your map previous, if you go into this drop down box and say highlight the Phoenix base, it'll highlight the static meshes that you've used so far in your map, and that only. And that goes in turn with the textures as well. So if I go into the textures browser, click on Phoenix base, it'll also show you the Phoenix textures that have been used only, and that'll help you, I suppose, understand which static mesh and which texture has been used so far in your map. And that only happens when you open up your map after saving it. If you go on there and you've been mucking around for a while with different packages, it'll basically contain more. But as you can see here, this hatch, that texture there is pretty much the texture they've used to colour that static mesh. So hopefully that makes sense. And also a good rule of thumb, which I'll explain as we go through this, each static mesh will obviously have an associated texture, and that texture will be made up of probably one or two files. And as you can see here, there's two files here for this hatch texture. Once again, explaining more detail in Valediction's tutorial, but this here is just the specular map, which is the color detail map. But further down, as you can see here by the name here, it's just got texture hatch. But going further down to the next one, and I don't know whether you can see the glow on my screen, but it's got here shader hatch shader. They've actually created a shader out of it. And the way to get an understanding of what they've done to replicate or make that shader is to click on it. Either double click on it with your left mouse or right click, choose properties. You actually go into the shader properties here, and it shows you what they've done to make this shader. Now in this case here, they've used the the specular map, or the texture hatch, and they've put it into the diffuse. They've also put the same texture down here in the specularity mask. And they've also done something tricky with a cube map, which you'll find in this package as well. It's got here text env map, Phoenix base, ref text env map. That makes all sense. But you can see it here. It doesn't actually show a picture, but they've actually created a cube map using certain files once again in the in TVEd. So what they've done is they've actually got that file there, and they've ported it over into this slot, which is simply just going and use. But going back to where we were with actually copying and pasting and actually creating a shader, which uses Photoshop in this tutorial. So that was silly. No, it wasn't. Alright. So what I'm going to do is highlight this hatch. Going to go up to edit and copy. Going to get edit and paste. And that simply just replicates the static mesh they had highlighted. Just going to drag it out a bit so it makes more sense. Alright, there's our static mesh, the hatch. What I want to do is turn it into a Blood Eagle colours. So once again, going into our static mesh, our texture browser, as I've shown you, an easy way of finding which texture is associated with that static mesh, which is right there. I'm just going to go for the specular map. I'm going to right click on that and choose export to file, and I've just got a habit of sticking on my desktop. Alright, now what I'm going to do now, I've already got Photoshop opened up. I'm going to go to file, choose open, and find that shader, or sorry, that texture, and open it up into Photoshop. Now once again, I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about the different layers they have with the static meshes and textures they have in TVEd, but basically just a quick one. You have a layer, and you also have a channel, and they've got an alpha channel incorporated into this shader, or into this texture, sorry. We're not going to need to adjust the alpha, so we'll just go back to the shader. If you cycle back from a layer to a texture and back again, it'll lock it so you can't actually choose it. To get back to it, choose duplicate, click OK, and where it says the background copy, right click and choose delete, and that goes back just to the simple background. Alright, using Photoshop, go up to image, adjustments, and replace color. What you do is you bring up this replace color window with a little picker to start with. What you do is you choose on or click on part of the screen that you want to change. As you see, it selects it there. You go down to this section of the screen, and you bring up your color tablet where you choose a color that you want to change it to. Now I just want to change it to red. I'm not going to be real picky here in regards to the color, but you can see what I've done there. I've changed the color from yellow to red. Now in these final adjustments down here in regards to the hue, the saturation, the lightness, you can muck about with that to make it not quite so bright. Probably marry up a little bit better with the Blood Eagle color you've got incorporated so far, but going to settle on that. As you can see on the outer areas of the red, there's still some yellow left, but not going to be too concerned about it at this point. You can go back in there and go to image adjustments, replace color again, and tweak that a little bit further. But that's all I'm going to do. I've changed it to a red. I'm happy with that. Going to go to file, save as. Now it's already named as hatch, but it's also in DDS format. Going to go down to Targa or TGA, and just out of habit, whenever I change a texture, I either call it the color that I've just changed it to, or I change it to, or I add to the side that it's going to be associated to. But in this case here, hatch red TGA. Click save. 32 bits per pixel. 32 bits per pixel. I've just done night shift, so I'm a bit tired. Click on OK. Alright, we can close down Photoshop. That's all we need to do. Obviously, if there's more textures associated to a static mesh, you'd have to do that to more than one texture. Now, because you've modified a texture which has been taken outside of TVEd and you're going to import it back in, you've got to go into your My Level package via your texture browser. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to choose File and choose Import. Find that texture that we just modified. So there it is, Hatch Red. Going to click on that. Now we're going to leave the Generate Bitmaps ticked, but we're going to choose DXT3 compression. Once again, explain in more detail in Valediction's tutorial. In here, I've already created a slot in my level folder, but just going to say we're going to call this Base Shaders. Once again, being just a little bit fussy about in regards to how they're stored in your level package. But it's in your level package, call it Base Shaders, and name, which is the texture name, Hatch Red. Click on OK, and that'll automatically correct that directory in my level folder. And there it is. We have to create a shader now to basically complement what's been done on this static mesh, but not going to cover it off in this tutorial. So we just want to show you how to cover the change. Now, with that texture there, we can quite simply go and put that on that static mesh. To do that, you right click on the static mesh. Where it says static mesh active properties, click on that. What we're looking for here is display, or the display slot. And that'll be shown here in that slot there. Click on the addition sign. Now scroll down using your sidebar, and we're looking for skins, which will be once again displayed there. Click on the addition slot. Clicking on that will show any skins or any textures that have already been incorporated. Because it's already a standard TV mesh or static mesh, it won't show that. But what we have to do is add a slot. So click on the arrow and choose Add, and that adds a slot right there. We need to go back to our texture. In reality, it should be a shader because the shader has been incorporated in the static mesh, but I'm not going to do it with this tutorial. Make sure it's highlighted with a green border. Go back to that slot, click on the arrow, and choose Use. As you would have seen then, that shader or that texture that we just modified the detail in Photoshop, we've imported it back in using Bitmaps and DDX or DXT3 compression, and we've actually imported it into the static mesh. So now you have a Blood Eagle themed Phoenix hash, Phoenix style hatch, if that makes sense. But like I said, there's more to a texture and a shader based on what TV Editor's done. But that was just simply to show you that you can actually change the colours of side-specific static meshes to make it more side-specific to get this sort of result over here, as I've done over on this Blood Eagle style base using Phoenix style static meshes. So hopefully that makes sense, and thanks for watching. Bye.